Hello and welcome again to Battle Ready. Last week we talked about, if you were thinking about starting Stormcast, some pros and cons. And today we thought we'd do the same thing for the Orruk Warclans. So this is for, if you're looking at Warhammer already and you're trying to decide, what army should I go with and what should I do here. And I'm sort of looking at these orcs. Are these Orruks? Are they cool? Is this something I should get into? But I sort of like them. I sort of like these greenskins. Well, today we're going to talk about a couple of pros, things that are why orcs might be great for you, and also a couple of cons. And not cons in the sense of they're bad, but just a few things to look out for so that as you start getting into it, you don't fall into any traps, right? You have some good information to build up your orky army. All right? Mm-hmm. You ready for this?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so a couple of pros. First pro is when you get the Orruk Warclans book, you're really sort of getting 4 different armies. Right? 4.
4? How 4?
Because you've got the Bone Splitters,
1,
the Iron Jaws,
2,
the Cruel Boys,
3,
and the Big Wah. So each of those armies plays a little bit differently. They all have their own special battle traits and special powers. And so if you're interested in getting some orcs, getting that book is sort of like getting 4 armies in one. It provides you with a lot of options, a lot of variety. And unlike something like, just as an example, Daughters of Cain, which sort of guides you into a few narrow paths.
Narrow path.
Yeah, it's really just about, I need a bunch of murder ladies. What flavor of murder lady do I want? Do I want witch elves? Do I want snake ladies? Do I want sisters of slaughter? And then you do your murdering, right? Just depends on what model you want on the board. But the style of play is really pretty similar with Daughters of Cain. But that's not true with the orcs. The Cruel Boys are very different than the Iron Jaws, are very different than the Bone Splitters. And then if you want to put them all in a blender, take the best of everything, make a Big Wah, you can do that. So if you're really looking at variety, if this is something where you think, I want to try out these orcs and I've got a lot of different ideas and ways to play, it's a pretty big pro. I think that if you like that kind of variety, getting started with the Orruk Warclans might be a good idea. Thoughts?
None.
None. You agree though? You think it's a good idea?
Yes.
Would you list that as a pro if somebody said, I want to start some orcs?
Yes.
Okay. So this is sort of in that same vein, but our second pro, it's very similar, is that it supports different play styles.
Play style.
Exactly. So with the variety, let's say that you want just an army that's you can just smash.
That would be Iron Jaws.
Iron Jaws, right? If you think, really what Warhammer is about is I'm going to take my buff dudes and I'm going to smash them against your buff dudes and we're going to see whose dudes are buffer. That's sort of the Iron Jaws way. Now, I don't mean to say that there's no subtlety to Iron Jaws play. Of course there is. There's a lot of interactions with different abilities and things like that. But if I was going to sum up Iron Jaws, I would say move forward, get there fast, and kill them dead.
Kill them dead.
Kill them dead.
Basically, this is Iron Jaws.
That's quite a good representation of Iron Jaws. So, and then sort of on the other end, you've got the Cruel Boys, and the Cruel Boys are not as physically imposing,
Yes.
but they do have a lot of shooting. They have a lot of mortal wounds, so they're able to dish out a lot of damage, not because they have high strength or
With lots of axes.
or high rend or high numbers of attacks necessarily, but when they do hit their 6s on the hit, those wounds go through. No save roll for the other side.
Unless they have wards.
Yeah, but that's not a save roll, right? They might have a ward roll. But it takes the save roll completely off the table. So if you've got 2-up Annihilators or 3-up Vindictors, too bad. So sad. Those wounds are going through. Yeah. So in a similar way, they can dish out a lot of damage, but they do it in a little bit of a sneakier way. And they have a lot
more cunning.
Cunning way. That's a good way to think about it. And they also have little tips and tricks that make them play a little bit more covert, a little bit more sneaky on the battlefield. Big Wah, you can sort of blend them all together. And sort of the cool thing about Big Wah is you take the Iron Jaws special ability, and the Bone Splitter special ability, and the Cruel Boy special ability, and each of them have one sort of major special ability, like the Venom Encrusted Weapons,
Good.
or
The war paint.
the War Paint, and you get to take that with you into the Big Wa, and then there's a separate set of lesser abilities. So it's pretty cool. So that each one still maintains a flavoring. So depending on your play style, if you like a particular way of playing, that's, the Orruk Warclans is maybe a good way to go. And within each clan, there are sub-factions, sub-clans that play a little differently.
Big Yellers for the cool boys. Big Yellers, Grenades, Skullbugs.
Skullbugs, Grand Blades. And they are different, and they focus on different areas. So you can have that nice variety in there. I wouldn't say that they're super different. Like all the Iron Jaws ones are all about, there's the one that buffs up your Gore-Gruntas, your big pig monster guys.
The Blood Toofs.
Is that Blood Toofs? I forget which one does which.
Hoofs or Toofs.
But I think it is Toofs. But, each one sort of focuses on a different area, so you can build your army with the units that you like. So that's pretty cool.
Iron Suns are mainly focused on smashing things, I think.
I think all Iron Jaws are focused on smashing things.
The Iron Suns specifically.
Okay. Any thoughts on the different play styles?
One thing I would like to say about the cool boys that are good, they have grots. Who doesn't want grots in their orc army?
That's true. Well, they have hobgrots.
Grots, orcs, hobgrots.
Hobgrots are in the middle.
Yes.
They also have that Marshcrawler Sloggoth, which I think is a grot. I think it has a grot.
Grot crew.
Crew, yeah.
But the thing itself is definitely not a grot.
No, it's like a giant troll because it can hail.
Troll-like beast.
It's a troll-like beast, a Sloggoth.
Bum, bum, bum.
All right, so those are all good. Another pro is the Battle Tome, brand new. And that's one of only 2 Battle Tomes that are updated for Age of Sigmar 3rd edition, ready to go, have all their rules in place.
Except maybe Soul Blight, but it still counts as a 2.0 book.
No, Soul Blight's definitely the old system. It was written, it was one of the last ones, maybe the last one. And so it was written with 3.0 sort of in mind. But it's for example, if you wanted to play Path to Glory, the Orruk Warclans book has all your specific Path to Glory rules.
About looting stuff.
About looting your stuff, about new quests that are specific to the Orruk Warclans. Things like that are really cool. Soul Blight doesn't have that. They still have the old Path to Glory system, which was not as good. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm really interested in these Orruk Warclans, I would say, hey, it's a great one to start with. One of the reasons is they've got a battle tome that's updated, ready to go. You don't need to look at a ton of facts. You don't need to look at a ton of updates and rulings and things like that. It's pretty much good to go. You can play with it in the 3.0 framework without any problems. Thoughts?
No.
And the last sort of pro, especially as somebody new to Warhammer, to speak for the Orruk Warclans, is that the War Scrolls have all been made simpler. Simpler doesn't mean less powerful. Certainly not. When you look at some of the crazy stuff that the Orcs get,
like
with Maw Crushes and
Kragnoses.
Kragnoses. But also, what they did is they removed a lot of the command abilities. So now you're not having to remember every War Scroll has a different command ability and I have to spend points to do this and to do that. It's not like that. But there are abilities that interact with command abilities, like the Mega Boss on Maw Crusher can actually issue a command, the same command 3 times for only 1 point. So he can all-out attack, boom, 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 3 times. He can Mighty Destroyers, which was an Iron Jaw specific ability, 3 different units, and that
Rally.
huge. Oh, rally, although they won't be out of combat that often. So I don't know how much rally you'll get. But yeah, or if you were Cruel Boys and you had a bunch of Manskewer Bolt Boys, you're playing sort of a shooting army. Unleash Hell, Unleash Hell, Unleash Hell. 3. Now only Gordrak could do that. not any old Maw Crusher, but you get the idea. They have abilities that work really well, and you still have to learn them, and it'll be pretty fun. But
But
they're taking a lot of the command abilities off the scrolls, so that it does feel a little bit more streamlined, and it doesn't feel like they've dumbed the army down. It doesn't feel like they've removed pieces that made the army fun. It feels like they just streamlined it and made the overall experience better, particularly for a new player. Thoughts?
no.
Okay. Do you have any additional pluses? If somebody says to you, hey, I'm thinking of starting Warhammer, tell me about those orcs. Are those orcs any good? Anything you want to add?
Bone Splitter specifically. Usually with armies like Stormcast, there's sort of more varieties on what you can do. But with the Bone Splitters, specifically that their tattoos, you can paint them any color.
Well, that's true. Every army has its suggested schemes, and I think the Bone Splitters do too. But because the Bone Splitters are more naked, you can sort of do whatever you want in terms of their tattoos.
Red, blue, pink, orange, yellow.
Yeah, so there's a little bit more opportunity for you to go wild with them, I guess.
Just not green. Green, probably.
Yeah, green on the green skin probably wouldn't look as good.
If at all.
All right, so couple of warnings, couple of things that, I think overall, Orruk Warclans is a great place to start if you're interested in this army in particular. Couple of little warnings. The first one, Drake and I might disagree about a little bit, but the first one I would just, as a little warning, is watch out for the Bone Splitters.
No.
So I'll give you my take, and then Drake can tell me why I'm wrong. So I don't think the Bone Splitters are that cool. I think that that their ability is just not as exciting as the other guys. Cruel Boys get those mortals on a 6. Iron Jaws get Mighty Destroyers and a bunch of other cool stuff. And the Bone Splitters, what they really get is a 6-up ward. Daughters of Cain have that natively. Almost every Death army has that basically natively.
I like it mainly because I roll amazing with 6s.
That's true. It works well for you. But it's just not, as far as the guys go, it's not the most exciting, unique, special ability. And the Boar Boys didn't really get any new units. Not the Boar Boys. The Bone Splitters didn't really get any new units. And the interactions aren't as exciting. I don't know. The Bone Splitters don't excite me. And I would just say, before you jump all in on Bone Splitters, maybe read the book a little bit and make sure that's the way you want to go. Thoughts?
I think the Bone Splitters are cool.
And why is that?
Because they hunt giant monsters. They have interesting painting styles. And they were the very first orcs.
Also true. So from sort of that lore perspective, that history, you think that's what makes them cool?
Also, they'd be good in a big WA. If you don't have Cruel Boys, because if you're like, nah, I don't get rid of these Cruel Boys, I'm going to go wild and I'm going to go brutal. Then you're chilling because the Bone Splitters have access to Lore of the Swamp.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So you don't even need to waste the points on Cruel Boys if you don't want to have some Cruel Boys.
That's pretty cool. So yeah, I guess, but see, then I would say, well, the thing that makes Bone Splitters cool is that they can do things that Cruel Boys can do.
Yes, but if you don't like to be cool, you can just go wild.
Okay.
Also, but on their own, if they're just Bone Splitters, no. I think they're mainly built, in my opinion, for a big WA.
You think they would be better in a big WA?
Yeah.
It is interesting. You get a lot of battle line options. So you could be, Drackfoot or Icehorn.
Iceborne. Icebone.
Icebone. There's different factions for the Bone Splitters, and each one gets a different battle line option. So that lets you have a lot of cool building ways. But yeah, it's just my opinion. I would just say, before you throw in too heavily with those Bone Splitters, make sure that's the one you want, because they're not as exciting. Okay, second warning. So the lore for the Stormcast Eternals is pretty cool. They've got all these accomplishments. They're these deific warriors. They've got this tragic flaw where the more they die and are reforged, the less of themselves they become. It's really cool. And that's not unique to Stormcast. I mean, there's a lot of factions out there with some really interesting and cool and layered lore. I don't know that the orcs do that.
No, I disagree.
Okay, well, I'll tell you my version, and then you can tell me yours. Here's sort of the orc lore if I were to sum it up. They hit things, and then they get big, and they scream wah, and they hit things, and they get bigger, and they keep going. And I mean, it's sort of cool, and especially on the tabletop, you can really get into it and say, yell out wah, and do all kinds of cool stuff. But it doesn't have really the layered backstory that with a lot of depth that some of the other factions do. The Ideneth Deepkin and the way they have to steal souls and all this stuff. It's really it can be very cool, but it's one note. You're going to play it on this level, and that is that. It's a little bit different now with the Cruel Boys. The Cruel Boys did add a little bit of a layer there, but it's a variation on a theme. It's not really its own, super different. So if you really want to play a tragic story, or the story underneath the character is really, really important to you, you might want to, look into some look into some Orruk Warclans lore before you get too deep into it. All right, and now for what I can only assume is the correct opinion. What do you got?
I think it's cool because it features all 3 lores. Mm-hmm. It gives you the Bone Splitter lore, the Cruel Boys lore, and the Iron Jaws lore. Mm-hmm. So, you have all 3 factions in one book, so you don't have to buy extra books.
Yeah, I think having all 3 factions before Counting Big Wah, right, are all in one book is amazing. I think that's a great benefit to start.
Price saving.
All right, last warning is obviously the newest sub-faction. Anyway, the newest one is the Cruel Boys. They've got the newest models. Some of them look amazing.
Especially Gobsprak.
Yeah, like Gobsprak. A lot of them are pretty cool. It's really cool. The one warning I would put on there is with Cruel Boys specifically, you got to be just a little bit careful about list building, because right now they only have one native battle line unit, which is the Gut Rippas. And the Gut Rippas cost 180 points for 10, which is a lot.
I mean, they have the 2 lines.
Yeah, I mean, they're not bad, but 180 points is a lot. Vindictors have 2 lines, and they're only 145 or something like that.
And they have the Mortals on.
Well, I guess they're 145 for 5, so they are a little bit more expensive. But anyway, it's a lot. And you compare that to Iron Jaws, which has 2 units of battle line, one of which is only 85 for 5, so super cheap. So you can get those guys in.
Cheaper than Hobgrots.
You've got the Brutes, which is sort of like an elite battle line. And you've got at least one sub-faction that makes your Gorgruntas battle line. So you've got lots of options. And then on the Bone Splitter side, you've got their normal battle line, which is pretty inexpensive. And then each sub-faction makes something else battle line. So you can build your lists real easy depending on what faction you jump into. Whereas the Cruel Boys, there is one sub-faction that makes your Bolt Boys battle line. So that's good. But the other 2 sub-factions, you're relying on those Gut Rippas. And spending 180 3 times, so that's 540 points. That's a quarter of your army on battle line, on mid-sized battle line. That's a lot. That's a lot. So just be aware. I have a sneaking suspicion that we'll see Gut Rippa's points go down in the future.
As do I.
So, maybe that'll be a thing. But until then, you're sort of locked into that one battle line unit. You don't have a lot of options to customize your army the way that you might want to, in the way that you can as Iron Jaws or Bone Splitters, or in a lot of other factions, Stormcast or whatever. So just be aware that if you think those Swamp Boys are the coolest, as I do, then
as do I.
You just need to say, okay, well, just be aware that there are some list building limitations if you want to do matched play. If you're not doing match play, if you're doing Path to Glory, which is amazing, and we'll talk about in an upcoming video, then who cares? Go with it. But just, if you've got some match play games you want to play with friends and things like that, just be aware that there's that little strange issue on the Cruel Boy side.
This blob represents how many Cruel Boys battle line you need.
That's a lot.
It's 30 gut rippers.
You have 30 gut rippers with min-sized units, right? So that's it for cons. And again, when I say cons, I'm talking about
Warnings.
Just little cautions. But if you're interested in orcs, fabulous. I really think that it's a great faction to start with, especially with its new 3.0 book, new models. It's easy to understand the play. It's got relatively straightforward gameplay, but it still has some cool tricks depending on how you want to build it. And it's got just a ton of variety in that battle tome. It's like getting 4 factions in one, so you can get that battle tome, decide which way you want to go, and just have a blast with it. Final thoughts?
It's very interesting how you have to properly pronounce war.
Wah.
You have to yell it.
Yeah, that's true. It has to be a high volume in order to properly pronounce it.
Which I probably won't do unless I'm in a party.
Any final thoughts on somebody who said, hey, I'm thinking about starting orcs?
You should buy the battle tome just to make sure you like it.
Mm-hmm.
Know that you shouldn't bellow wah that loud.
Not if you want your parents or your significant other, or your roommates, or whoever to like you, right? You want to maintain a normal decibel level.
And if you're playing matched play with Cool Boys, you might want to be Big Gillis, just so that you can have Volt Boys battle line.
Yep, getting that extra battle line option is huge. Okay, well, I think bottom line, if you like the Orruks, you're in a good spot. They are a great army to start with. And hopefully this has been helpful in, your initial entry into that army and into Warhammer. So thank you so much for watching. This has been Battle Ready.